Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday, October 29th. We're only going to get one, so we're going to make it a good one. My name is Dave. This here is Steve Edwards, and you might not have heard him in the background there. I was getting the audio going correctly, but Jess is here as well. Jess, are you there?
Yep, there he is.
There you go. So Jess is here, which that means it's going to be a great day. Whenever you hear that dog just makes everything better. And I know you missed Jess while you were out of town, Steve. You're back from some travels. Tell us when you got back and what'd you come back to?
Well, come back Sunday afternoon about 5:00, and wow, that was an experience being over there in Honolulu and Kauai. I've been to Kauai before, Honolulu just for a short time, but this time we went to Honolulu because I wanted to see the Arizona Memorial. I wanted to step aboard the Missouri where the end of World War II was signed. I wanted to relive see some of that stuff. My dad was in World War II, and he came in the next day after Pearl Harbor was attacked. Him and a whole shipload of guys, and it was quite a mess. But anyway, that's something over there. They got freeways, but those freeways, the speed limit is 50 miles an hour. That's it. And you'll know why really quick when you get there. It took us 28 minutes to go 4 miles. Yeah. So you can keep Honolulu. I just soon I do that. And the beaches. Oh, Dave, you don't want to go. No, you've already been to Hawaii, hadn't you? But I'm going to warn the other guys there and the other gals. There are gals on that beach. An aspirin bottle has more cotton on it than what them gals were wearing. Well, it was tough trying to keep my mind on sand and water and being on the beach. It was I don't know. Wow, it was incredible. So anyway, that and had a lot of rest. It's the first time I've ever gone somewhere and not touched a mule. I had a lot of friends there on Kauai, and this sort of thing. And I met up with a couple of them, had some meals, but just flat decided that hey, we'll put the mules to one side and just hey, have fun together. And that's what we did, my wife and I. So we really enjoyed. It was very restful. And it was about a 5-hour flight back, which was quick, zip zap. So anyway, I'm done with that. So I'm back home now. It's nice and cool out here. Matter of fact, it was 68 degrees this morning here at the ranch.
Yeah, it was awesome here in Chandler too. Or in Gilbert. I woke up and I had a real busy day. So I woke up extra early. I got started on work and I took a 45-minute break to go on my walk, and it was gorgeous. I saw people wearing sweatshirts and long pants. And folks, anytime it reaches sub 60 degrees, the sweatpants and the long sleeve shirts are coming out, and they sure were this morning. It's awesome. Well, we're glad that you're back. We're glad that you were able to take Susan on her excursion, and hopefully you had a little bit of fun too. But we are glad that you're home, and we are glad that we get to talk mules and donkeys again, as we do each and every week. And before we get too far into today, well, real quick, I got something I want to say. But I do want to welcome you. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. It is good to have you. If this is your first time joining us, there's really only 3 things you need to know, and they are simple. First and foremost, please share your name, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like. You can see Jim, Ashley, and James have already done that on YouTube. You can see Polly and Merlin have already done that on Facebook. Go ahead, join them. Share your name, where you're watching from, and what the weather's like so we can say hello to you and know what's going on across the country and across the world. Second thing is that you take the time to ask any and every mule or donkey question that you've got. Steve, I actually have quite a few questions that I have this week. I sat down, I took about an hour to think through, man, what are some of the things I would love to learn more about? So I have a few questions that I put together for today, but we want to hear your questions. What do you want to know more about so that you can gain the trust of your animal and get results when you train and enjoy what it is to be an equine owner, an equine rider, an equine friend? We want to help you as best we can. And then the third thing we ask is that you share the broadcast on Facebook or YouTube using all the buttons and all the comments and everything that they got there. Really, I wanted to, right off the bat, Steve, I wanted to know. Well, you and I had talked. We've got our next webinar coming up, our next online clinic. It's about 2 weeks away, and we are going to be talking all about equitation for the mule and the donkey rider. And I asked you to do this one because this is something that I don't know that I'm sure we've talked about elements, but I don't know that we've ever specifically talked about equitation. And I want to learn, and I want to invite everybody else to join me to learn. So, would you take just maybe 60 seconds, 2 minutes to tell us about why equitation for the mule and donkey is important, what that includes, and why folks are going to want to participate and join us a couple weeks from now?
Absolutely. So equitation is very, very important. The easiest way to say what equitation is communication. Just like you and I are talking, we'll talk and have conversations. Sometimes we'll use our hands, but most of the time it's conversation. So as we talk, you understand that I say, I have a hat. There is a flag. And you and I understand those words when we're talking English to English. But unfortunately, when most writers, a big percentage of the writers, get on an equine, they get on a trained equine, and trained equine doesn't understand a thing that you're saying. Okay. And one of my favorite things to explain this is that when I would go to clinics and do clinics, I would take one of my own personal mules. And during the clinic, I'd always take a Friday evening and I would do a Q&A, question and answer. And I would demonstrate to people what different things look like. And you would see my trained mule side pass, turn on the forehand, turn on the hindquarters, and back up, and a nice light rein when snaffle bits are used, when finish bits are used, types of spurs, types of boots, and I would talk about all this stuff, and then I would have someone from the audience climb down. I'd say, who's been riding 20 years? And they'd come down and they'd get on my mule. In a few minutes later, it looked like it wasn't even trained. Okay. So you can have a quote trained mule, but if you don't understand equitation, you are not going to be able to fully communicate to this mule. Now, equitation comes by using your voice, your hands, your legs, and your seat. Okay. Your voice is going to be minimal. Matter of fact, my favorite thing is don't say nothing. It's best you don't. You're carrying on a conversation to a mule that has no idea what you're saying, or a donkey that goes, huh, what? So what they do understand is they do understand comfortable, uncomfortable. They do understand ask, tell, demand. So I'm going to be teaching you equitation with using your hands. Okay. What direct reining is, okay, and when to use direct reining, what a snaffle bit is and when to use a snaffle bit, what a finish bit is and how to properly hold your hands for that finished bit. And then here is the big part that most people have a lot of problem with, and that is using from your waist, your belt down. They have a problem with that because they're not understanding where to place their legs in order to communicate, and that's what I want to do in this program. Uh, and we're not going to have a live mule, but I'm going to try to tell it to you with communication with words, so that you can visually see it, and this is really important. I will use a couple deals that I have that will be a mule that I would, it's a miniature, it's a model, and I'll show you how to do different things there. But basically, the biggest thing that I'm going to be talking about is how to use your legs properly, how to use your seat properly, and how to use your torso properly, because all of that makes the mule uncomfortable, and you need to show them how to be comfortable. So there it is in a nutshell. It's be a lot of fun. We're going to have about an hour, I guess, there, huh, Dave? And
Yeah.
we'll get things figured out.
It always is a lot of fun, and folks want to know, well, what's the difference between a special webinar, special online clinic versus our Ask Steve program? And the difference is, y'all direct the program today. We go where you want to take the program. You are the star of the show. You are the one bringing direction, and we just follow you. On these special clinics, we bring a topic. In this case, I asked Steve to present on this because I want to learn about it and I want y'all to join me. But we bring a topic and Steve talks all about that. So I put a link in the chat section there in the chat for you to register for the free clinic. We'll work at putting together a nice program with some pictures, some diagrams. Steve's going to grab some of the props that he's going to use, and we'll work real hard to make sure that when you leave, you feel like there's a clarity, a certainty that you need when it comes to communicating from in the saddle. And I'll tell you what's interesting, Steve, folks don't realize, although my hair may give it away, that I haven't grown up around livestock. I haven't grown up on the ranch. I have not grown up around equine. They're massive animals to me. I know they get smaller to a lot of folks as they spend more time, but to me, they're just these massive animals. And over time, I've gotten more and more comfortable on the ground. But the second you put me in the saddle, it's complete foreign. We've talked so much about ground foundation training. We've talked about training in a 10-foot circle. We've talked about come along rope. We've talked about getting the nose on, all of these great things that sets as a foundation for some of the other work that you want to do, and that includes getting in the saddle. So I sure hope you'll join us. It's absolutely free, and you know we're big fans of the F word around here, so please join us November 13th, and it's going to be a great time together. And Steve, one more thing I want folks to know. Now, everyone listen up. Next Tuesday, there is something very important happening. And I'm not talking about the election or anything like that. What I'm talking about is the time change. We are switching times. And for everyone in the country, except for Arizona people, we are going to be 1 hour earlier. So it's going to be 2 p.m. Pacific on November 5th, 3 p.m. Mountain Arizona time, 4 p.m. Central, and 5 p.m. Eastern. Now, it is an election, and if you're sick and tired of having to wind your clocks back and forth and you're saying it's messing up my mule and donkey time, well, then get out there and vote for the candidate that's going to get rid of this daylight savings standard time swapperoo back and forth. You, America, can make a difference. But until our politicians get together to make a simple decision like that, never. We're going to be rolling back the clocks, 2 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, starting November 5th, and that will be all throughout standard time. All right, let's get this program started. Folks want to say hello, and we want to say hi back. Jim is watching from Alabama, where it's 78 and sunny. Paulie, our friend Paulie, watching from Barnesville, Minnesota, 58 with rain on the way. High of 45 tomorrow. Winter is coming. Merlin is watching from Northwest Minnesota, overcast and cool, about 42 degrees. Ashley is watching, says, hi guys, record-breaking temps here in beautiful Minneapolis. I just went to the Arizona Memorial. Very sobering. Thanks for sharing that, Ashley. Appreciate you stepping into that with Steve. Jim is watching from Western Maryland, 71 degrees, no wind. Leslie is watching from Decatur, Illinois. Windy, she's got the wind and mid-80s. Joan is watching from Buffalo Creek, Colorado, anticipating the end to a long, warm autumn. Leslie says mulemanship versus horsemanship. Mulemanship versus horse. What was that in response to, Leslie? Was that what'd you say?
Well, I know about this.
Okay.
All right. So Leslie has been, watching us. She's been going over my programs. She's been watching me train on video, and she's been going to our little talks like this here. And so she called me one day, and she was really excited. She says, I'm going to go to a mule training seminar a Mulemanship seminar, and I want to know some of the things to ask. And I said, well, sure, So I kind of gave her some list and talked, and I said, she mentioned, who it was that was doing this mule training seminar, and I says, well, you've been watching me, and you've been listening to my training, and what I'd like you to do is watch it, pay attention, and then get back to me and tell me how it went for you. Okay. And if it worked out good for you, and I want you to tell me, do you think it was horse training in a mule costume, or was it truly mule training, truly communicating to the mule? And she says, "Oh, she says, good. Well, thanks for the questions and the things like this. And I've been watching your stuff, but I just kind of would like to do hands on. So she did. So next thing I know, I got a email from her and said, oh, Steve, I am just leave it. Oh, Steve, I am really, I'm sad to say that the clinic that I went to was a horse clinic, uh, but with a lot of mules around. She said we had certain things that we had to do, and there were several of us, and there was like 4 or 5 steps to get to these different things. And she said the majority of us never got to step one, never got it done. And I said, well, what did you really want to do there? And she says, well, I really wanted some individual training to show me where to put my legs, or how to pick up my hands, or my mule, how to pick up his foot, or my mule wasn't stopping. But we never addressed individual needs. And folks, to me, that's what's important. I always say to my people, and you've heard me do this, Dave. I ask each one of them, give me 3 things that you want me to help you with. Give me 3 things. And I usually have 10, maybe 12 people. And I want to focus on those 3 things for each one of you. All right. Now, of course, Dave, and you and I know, and you've seen this, that when I have done the seminars, that those 3 things really, the majority of the 10 people all had some aspects of needing help in that area. But my thing is help to get the problem, the issue figured out. Don't just have a big scope and say, we got to hit these goals. Okay. The goals for me as a teacher, a trainer, is to help the individual mule to communicate to the individual mule rider, the individual donkey, so the individual donkey person can do that. And so, anyway, Leslie was really disappointed. And she said, probably, Steve, I may not have been quite as disappointed if I hadn't watched your training. She says, I actually got most of my questions answered by just going back and watching your YouTube and Facebook stuff. So anyway, there it is, folks. When you're going to go to this training stuff, you really want to find out who is doing it and go from there. And I can tell you that there are very, very few people that really put on a specific to mules clinic. Okay, this person that she had that she went to watch and do, I know this person. I've watched them train, and yeah, if you're going to train a horse, they've got some pretty good techniques. But most folks don't understand these mules because of the donkey side. So there you are, Leslie. I hope that done it for you as a whole. Leslie did want me to bring it up, and I don't want to put out any names or anything like that. But folks, there's a major difference with this stuff when it comes down to some of these folks. And she spent a ton of money. She said she couldn't believe how expensive it was to go to this seminar. So anyway, there you are, Dave, as a whole.
That's good. I appreciate that. Folks, one of the things that I really, really love about this particular program is that not only do we get the benefit of getting a lot of this information right now in real time, but these are all on YouTube. hundreds, I think we're in the thousands now of videos on YouTube between our live programs, between our clinic, like our in-person on-the-ground ranch clinics, between all of the little spots that we've put together. It's all up there. And so folks are going to be able to come back to this time and time and time again. And hopefully you will be able to come back to it time and time and time again as well. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, Leslie. Eddie is watching from Louisville, Texas. Windy here and praying for rain. I put that on a shirt. I'd wear that. David Scholl, Queensland, Australia, has taken us international. Another hot and sunny day. A beautiful foal born last night by Moses. Now, Steve, this actually leads me to one of my questions that I don't think we've ever talked about. My question is: a foal is a baby, right?
Yeah, a baby mule or horse, equine.
Okay, how long is a foal a foal?
Well, a foal is usually a foal until he is weaned. Weaned can be done lots of different ways. A young Jack or John Mule needs to be castrated immediately. Both of the animals need to have their wolf teeth pulled, which are teeth up above. Okay, they're not like a John Mule, which have canines down below. Okay, but usually it's in the 6-week range is the average time when a foal is separated from its mother, and now it is weaned. So now it's called a weanling, and that's what Dave is doing. David Scholl is putting out some spectacular mules. You just look at the mares that he's breeding to, and then you see the Jack that he's breeding to. You know, everything is put together good. If he was selling mules here in the United States, he would be buried. And as it is, he sells these animals before they're even hitting the ground, Dave. You know, I mean, these are some popular, wonderful mules that he's breeding.
Folks, I'm putting a link in the comments section now to an awesome program we did with David Scholl. Y'all can go watch that. If you're interested in breeding and if you're interested in what it's looked like to build that program, what it looks like now, he shares a lot of great information that's really entertaining to hear. And David's a great guy. He and Di are just fantastic people. And so just spending time listening to their story is going to be a lot of fun for so many of you.
Yeah.
Judy is watching from Gazelle, California. Cool jacket and sweater weather, but although sunny today, there was a light dusting of snow in the hills this morning. Oh my goodness, it's starting. Edna is watching from Spring Hill, Florida. Warm and a nice breeze. Cowboy Ken, Connecticut. Cloudy all day, 60 degrees. He's just showing off now. Robert is watching from North Missouri, 78 degrees, windy, windy, windy. Donna Joe is watching. Good afternoon. I'm not home, and I'm in a state that I'm temporarily staying. Well, I'm glad that you are consistently showing up no matter what state you are temporarily in. It's good to have you here. Donna Joe. Hannah is watching from Dunedin, Florida, as she does. Gorgeous. God bless America. Damien says, what can I do to desensitize the flank on my mule? What is a flank, Steve?
Flank is the side, is the back part where the belly of the mule comes around from the shoulders back toward the hips, and the area between the hip and the body right in here is called the flank. Now, if you go to rodeos and you see bucking horses, they have what's called a flanking rope. And when its rope is pulled up tight right there, now that's right in behind the back leg, right where it comes up from the belly and comes up, okay? And there's an area right in there. You pull that rope up, and that horse will kick and jump and buck to try to get the pressure off of it. All right. Now, there's also the rear cinch, is called the flank cinch. Okay. By a lot of people, not by me. All right. And a lot of people won't they're concerned about using the flank cinch, the rear cinch, because they're worried their mule, their donkey will want to buck. Okay, but it's not in the flank area. The cinch is directly to the center part of the belly, and when your hobble cinch strap is tied to the front cinch, it will keep that cinch there. And if you're riding the right saddle, your rear cinch will stay in the right place because the D ring is in the correct place for the body. Now, I know I said a lot right there, okay? But a lot of people won't use a rear cinch because they're afraid they're going to make the animal buck. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Then how come all saddles that you see, except for English saddles, all have a rear D-ring? Ah, a rear D-ring. Yeah, a rear D-ring. Without a rear D-ring, without a rear cinch, your saddle cannot ride correctly. And we've got a webinar that we've done about white spots. And Dave is also putting together an article about that, about white spots and how it comes about. But when you don't have a rear cinch correctly tightened on a horse or a mule, but especially on a mule, you want it really tight. On a horse, you want it snug. Your cantilever will be there, and you'll have white spots on your mule, donkey, or horse.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the question there. Appreciate that, Damien. And yes, we do have the webinar available, and the article is forthcoming. If you want the webinar, it's absolutely free. All you have to do is go to muleranch.com, and if you have an account, sign in. If you don't have an account, create an account. That's free too. And once you're in, you'll see a link to the video library, and that's where you can get that webinar as well as several additional webinars, ground foundation training, bits, saddle. Let's see. I don't think we talked about shoeing, surcingle training. There's quite a few that you can have access to, and it don't cost you a thing. So a lot of good benefit there to muleranch.com if you sign up for an account. Jim, 81 in Door, Michigan. Do you see a problem with one rider taking out two mules on a trail ride, ponying one for about an hour and a half, and then switching? Do you have any recommendations? What a great question.
Hey, Jim is enjoying his new life with his mules. He spent some time with a good friend of mine, Jimmy Williams, bought these two mules, and now he's enjoying life. And he's a firefighter. He's a police officer up there in Michigan, so he's going to be using these mules for crowd control, things like this. So going back, yes, perfect. Ride your mule out, ride one out, have the other one saddle ready to go, and then ride the other one back home. Absolutely. Make sure, Jim, that you understand how to properly lead one before you get out on the trail. So around the corrals, around your rim pins and this sort of thing, make sure you understand using a come-along rope. Very, very, very important. Using that come-along rope, because that come-along, if there's a problem comes up, that come-along will be able to give you the ability to control the situation. So yes, enjoy. More people ought to do that, Jim. Good idea. Y'all, if you got extra mules, pony them out.
Steve, next question we have comes in from Simmery, and Simmery says, my donkey hoof is cracked. How can I repair it?
Well, send me a picture of it. It's most likely in the quarters, which is if you take the shoe, the hoof, like this, it's usually right here back toward the back. And that is the biggest problem with your mule's feet, you all, is you've got a donkey foot. The donkey hoof is the worst hoof that there is, okay? And it will crack very easily, especially if it's the older type models of the donkeys. In other words, the older models being some of the original donkeys, and so they have The shoe comes around and curves in, and about always cracks in that area. Pretty tough. So, what can you do about it? Number one, your donkeys are always too long in the hoof. Always trim them short, especially for the wintertime, you all, because of the mud and the balling up of the snow. So you always want to keep this short. So and the angle is going to depend upon the shoulder of the mule. Okay, this is really really important. So what can you do about the crack? Well, I'd have to see it to tell you. There's a couple different ways of doing it. Most likely, if you'll trim the hoof up, that'll take away the majority of it. Okay. Now, if you get some of these hoof cracks, or in other places like toward the toe and this sort of thing, you can end up doing corrective shoeing on the animal in order to be able to keep the cracking from going on. Okay, now here's the problem with the cracking. It's called separation of the lamina, which it could get to a special problem where the outside wall, which is right here, is starting to separate from the lamina, which is like a shock absorber, which protects the coffin bone right here. All right. So the problem with the crack is we start getting bacteria up in there from mud and this sort of thing. And that crack could end up going clear up the foot and could create some pretty serious problems. So have your farrier come out, trim him short. Some farriers will take the crack and they'll file just above it like this to keep it from going up, or you can even drill a hole, but you have to be careful there and know how much to drill. So you've got a tool like a socket on the drill bit so you don't go in very far and keep it from cracking that way. But the biggest thing, folks, is to make sure you trim them every 4 to 6 weeks. All right, very, very important. Good question.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the question there. Appreciate that. Scarlett is watching from Safford, Arizona. Andrea is watching from 75-degree Alabama. I can point to where I want my donkeys to go, and they go there. I don't know if I'm communicating correctly, but they are obeying. Thank you, Steve, for what you do. Is that normal? Should you be able to just point and they'll go?
You can, it's no, it's not normal. It does take quite a bit of training to do, but can you do that? Yes, especially when there's food involved. Okay. And when there's food involved, then yes, you can point them and they will go toward those directions because there's grain and this sort of thing there. So there's several ways of doing it, but good for her for getting that done.
Awesome. Steve, next question. We've talked about this a lot, and I think it's a good one to mention again. Melinda is asking for a feed suggestion for her mules. I'm going to send them to the article, but can you just give a quick 15, 30 seconds on a basic feed so that Melinda knows the context of what I'm sending her?
Okay, so here's the big thing with feed, folks. You want to be careful about carbohydrates. So when you're reading about the nutritional value that's on a particular package, that'll help you. Okay, now you also want to test your hay to see what's in that hay. And I always tell everybody, try to buy 1 year off of feed off of one field so that you don't have big changes in feed. Because there'll be times like, I forget who it was just recently, sent me a testing. Maybe that might have been.
Was it Dave O'Brien?
I believe it was Dave O'Brien that did some testing on it. It may have been Pingali, but I think it's Dave O'Brien. Anyway, he tested his hay. And folks, here it's really tough because you're thinking you're feeding hay. And yeah, you're feeding hay, but it needs to have certain nutrients to be able to take care of your animal. Now, here's the deal with the feed again. Feed according to your use. Okay. Now, to give you an idea, this past 2 weeks, I overfed, and I didn't do as much exercise as normal. So I put on a couple pounds, like 4 pounds. So here's the deal. If you're going to be riding your animals, you need to feed them accordingly. Okay. If you're going to be standing your animals, you need to feed them accordingly. So there's the long and short of it. We've got some good articles on that.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the comment section here right now, folks. It's Steve's article, Mules Can't Stand Prosperity. And the idea here, mules can't stand prosperity. And the idea here is that a lot of folks, this was new for me. When Steve was talking about, hey, keep them in a 20 by 20 pen, 10 by 20 stall, monitor their food, monitor their water, monitor their manure. It sounded like, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to just be sitting there. They want to be out. They want to be free. My 10-year-old, I was like, hey, we're going to go to this restaurant. He's like, I don't like that restaurant. I said, why? He goes, it feels so small. When I go to a restaurant, I want to be free, right? We think that they want to be like my little 10-year-old, free at a restaurant, to roam and do this. When the truth that I have observed and that Steve has shared is that really they just want to be comfortable. They just want to, and a lot of times that's just being left alone. With that, you don't want them to be operating as if they don't need you. You want to know why they're hard to catch? Well, it could be that they don't need you because out in pasture, they've got all the food they need. They have all their buddies. They have everything that they could possibly want. Why would they let you catch them? And so when you move them from out in the pasture and you move them into a 10 by 20 or a 20 by 20 stall, Steve, you do 10 by 20, right?
Yep.
10 by 20 stall. What you are able to do beyond make them dependent upon you, you are actually able to do what Steve was talking about, that feed to use. You know exactly how much feed they're getting. You know exactly what feed they're getting. You know exactly how much water they're drinking, and you can adjust based upon the time of year, how much work they're getting, and you can adjust based upon the nutrition needs that they have. In Mules Can't Stand Prosperity, what you're going to find is what Steve calls a starting point for your feed and nutrition program. This is not get Lake and Light and you're good to go. No, that's the starting point, and you take the ingredients and you take it to your feed shop and you say, what do you have that's closest to this? And you pair that with a blood test or a hair follicle sample, which a lot of university extension centers will do. And then you know where your animal is abundant and where the animal is deficient. They're just like us. My body produces certain things in abundance and other things in deficiencies, where Steve is different. Those things that are deficient in my body might be more abundant in his. So you find out feed doesn't have to be confusing. Feed doesn't have to be overwhelming. And the way that you remove the confusion and you make it simple is by getting information. And the information you want is the blood sample to know what's exactly inside of your animal and a starting point for your feed. Don't end there. It's a starting point. Anything you would add there, Steve? The mule guy's trying his best. Anything you'd add?
No, the mule guy is pretty awesome there. No, congratulations. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. You got to remember, folks, you got to be the herd leader. But the downside is you're the herd leader, but you're also a predator. And they would much rather be with their buddies than they would be with you, the predator, and this sort of thing. And I can tell you that feed is a very, very big problem because especially when you go back east, you got all that free grass. And gee, you want to feed on that free grass. I couldn't believe the overfed horses that I saw in this past couple weeks out in pastures and stuff that was belly high. And, a lot of veterinarians, if you just talk to them, they'll tell you you're overfeeding your animals. Now, if you want a cow and you have him ready for butcher in 6 months, put him out there in that pasture. But don't do that to your mules, donkeys.
Folks, don't forget, I'm going to remind you now, and I'm going to tell you at the end, free mule and donkey equitation clinic we're doing in a couple weeks. Equitation clinic. It's free to register. Go ahead, sign up. Wednesday, November 13th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Even if you cannot attend live, there will be a replay, and we would love to share that replay with you. And you can learn along with me on how to just go about developing a good equitation program for yourself. Valerie has the question. I had the come along on him. We walked to the arena. He hit the brakes. I bumped and he turned and spun and ripped it right out of my hand. We get 2 steps forward and then 10 steps back. I couldn't catch him for 4 hours. When he finally went in his stall, he had managed to get the come along rope off his pole and around his neck. Now he had 2 ropes around and I couldn't even get a finger under it. It was so tight and my husband had to cut it off. And I don't even ask for much to be done. We were just moving forward and back and shoulder and hind. So this keeps happening. He knows he jerks the rope right out of my hands. Now what? Send him to a trainer again? Sell him? I'm beginning to think that he needs someone with more experience. I've had him 3 years. While I have made some progress, he is just still a nervous Nelly. Steve, the first question that I have, which I hear you, Valerie, and we've had folks who have shared similar sentiments, and so I'm glad that you took the time to message. The first question that I have is really taking an animal like this into an arena a good idea? Would you want to stay within the stall? I remember when we did that couple that came out to the ranch, we did, I think, over half the time just in the 10 by 20, 20 by 20 stall. That's the first thing that I'm thinking. But what would you say here to Valerie?
Now you hit it right on the head there, Mule guy. Exactly. Now here it is, Valerie. It's called your timing. All right. It is your timing. If that animal has jerked out of your hand, he was already telling you he was going to do it. They do it a lot of ways, by elevating their head, by turning their nose right or left. That's why I tell you all that when you're walking with your mule, they are to be straight, not allowed to look to the right or left, even a teeny bit, not even a teeny bit. All right. So when it comes down to this, you want to make sure that you start first in a small pen. And Dave can send you uh, that little picture video that we have of where we started in a small pen and we worked out to a larger one. Okay. The big problem here, folks, with all of you, it's your timing. And if you lose your timing on the ground, guess what's going to happen when you're in a saddle? Your timing, these already ran off by the time you even think about stopping. It is your timing. So that's what you need to do. Start in a small pen. Dave can send you a link to that and go from the small pen to the bigger pen eventually. You want to do the same things like when I if you got my ground communication kit, you'll see how to place the martingale. I mean, how to do the come along hitch and the foundation things to do. And one of the downsides, Dave, and we see this a lot, is a lot of people will buy the come along rope only and not buy the kit, which shows them how to use the come along rope with basic foundation training. Okay. And that's really important because a lot of people miss that. There's so many things to look at. So there you are. It's your timing, and you're going into too big of an area.
There's a comedian, Nate Bargatze, and he makes this great joke about how he just doesn't know anything in life. He's like, you could send me back 100 years, and I tell people, hey, I'm from the future, and they'll be like, oh, hey, what do you got going on in the future? How did you do this? How did you do that? And he's like, I'd probably be more useless in the past than I was in the future, even though I know everything. And I feel like that's the way it is with the come along rope without the problem mule video. It's like having this incredible gift of being able to uh, do all sorts of stuff, right? Like you have the knowledge of the future, you go into the past and you can do all of these great things. You know, this is how this works out and this is how you avoid that conflict and whatnot. But if you don't have the information to make it work, it winds up being useless. And that's the way the come along rope is. It's a great thing to have, but if you don't know how to use it, it's going to prove to be useless to you. And that's why we put the problem mule video and the come along rope in the ground foundation starting kit, which includes an adjustable rope halter, which you are going to need, especially as you make your way through your bidding program. You're not going to need that rope halter very much until you get to surcingle training, until you get to introducing the mule riders martingale and that transition there. But that come along rope and the problem mule video, you're going to want to have those. And so right here in the comment section, ground foundation starting kit. And this is the only thing that we tell people to buy. Everything else we say we think it works out good for you, but it's your call. This one we basically say, like, we don't want you to go out there without your communication. This is your communication. It's like walking into picking up a telephone and not being able to speak, right? Like, we want you to be able to speak when you get into that stall and you begin doing your groundwork foundation training. Okay, next question, or let's see here. Let me hop back over. We want to say hello to Kenneth, watching from Patton, Missouri. 74 degrees, very dry. I appreciate what you guys do, and I sure do enjoy your show. Thank you, Kenneth. Andrea says, me and my donkeys are growing and learning together. We love hearing that. Thank you, Andrea. Keep the updates coming. Leslie says, thank you for speaking on that, Steve. John is watching from a snowy central Utah. Good day to be inside watching you. Hey, John, that just made our day. Thank you. Appreciate that. Ronnie from Graham, Texas, warm and wind blowing hard. Scarlett asks the question, is it possible to ride a mule side saddle? And so, Steve, is side saddle what I see in the movies when it's typically old-timey movies, and a woman is riding with both legs on one side? Is that side saddle?
Right, that's side saddle.
Is it possible to do that with a mule?
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, there are a lot of people, a lot of ladies that are doing it. It's not very comfortable. But back then, it wasn't ladylike for a lady to be wearing pants very much. And so the true ladies rode side saddle with their dress, okay? And there was a place to hook their leg and this sort of thing. And boy, you had to be pretty good to be able to do that. But yep, you can ride side saddle. It's no good out on the trails. You'll beat yourself to death. But if you're going to do a short little demonstration or a parade, it's pretty good, but I sure wouldn't want to be all day in the saddle on that thing.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Scarlett. We're glad that you're here. Hey, there he is right there. Mr. Coffee by David himself, David Pengelly. I just ordered a ton of stuff from Queen Valley Mule Ranch. Do I get a knife? That's really what I wanted. Steve, would we throw a knife in there for David Pengelly, wouldn't we?
Yeah, for David, we'd throw a knife in there. Matter of fact, don't tell anybody, but we give knives to everybody. Everybody. Don't let Pengelly hear that.
Daniel is watching, 72 and sunny in Mesa. Been using Steve's tips to build a foundation with my mule, and in just 2 weeks, he's made more progress than he did in 4 years just riding him. Thank you. I love hearing that, because the exciting thing is, for so many people, is to get in the saddle and ride. And what they don't realize is not only is the ride more enjoyable when you've built that connection, that bond, that leadership, that herd leadership with the animal on the ground, but it's actually a lot safer. There's never safe, but it's a lot safer to do all of that in the ground and have a firm, strong, established communication on the ground before you ever get in the saddle. So good for you, Daniel. That's awesome. Love hearing that, and thank you for setting a good example for so many other folks. That's great. Judy says there is a mule guy on the internet who promotes using the rear cinch in a very far back position. It is on the back side of the curve of the belly. He says it helps hold the saddle back so you don't need the britchin. What do you say? I know what Steve's going to say. Steve, let me wind them up and let them go.
There you go. Okay, so now here's what happens, folks. A lot of Canadians, when I was up in Canada doing some training up there with Nick West 30 years ago. Anyway, the Canadians would do that. They would pull that rear cinch up there. The downside is this. After a while, that cinch becomes loose. Remember, you all have seen cinches get loose. It gets loose. It gets caught up in that area, and boom, he becomes a bucking animal. It is truly then a bucking strap, okay? And I wouldn't do that. It's amazing to me, Dave, all these different ways of doing things that people think work good. But the problem is the downside is way down the trail. Cinches loosen up. How do you keep that cinch up there? You don't. Okay. Eventually it goes up into the groin, and now you got an animal wanting to buck. So yeah, there's lots of mule guys out there, folks. You have to make a decision on who makes the most sense to you.
That's what we say. Steve, several years ago on this program, uh, just started saying, "Hey, look, you know what, folks? I'm just going to share with you what has worked for me, what I
Yep.
have learned from the mule, what I have learned from the donkey. I started out doing everything's the way that other people had taught me, and some of that worked out, but a lot of it needed to be changed and adapted for the mule and the donkey. And so that's what I advocate. That's what I teach now. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to use it. You can use anything you want, but what I'm going to tell you is what I have learned, and then I'm going to help you get out there and do it correctly. And if you decide you want to do something else, that's your prerogative. So that's our value proposition here. Is we're going to share with you what has worked for Steve during his year with the mule, his years with the donkey. But by all means, do what you want to do. But we'll tell you that we think that it's in your best interest to start here and then go from there. Judy, thank you for that comment. Tamar is watching from Queensland, Australia, which means we've gone international again. It is overcast and threatening to rain. I sure wish we would get some rain threats here. Sandra is watching from Apache Junction. Not quite 70 here. Cooler weather, much appreciated. I can say, hey ho, Sandra. Yes, agreed to that. Our concrete warriors are watching. I know I've heard not ride your mule too hard until it's around 4 years old. What's your opinion, Steve? How many miles should you ride a 2 and 3-year-old mule?
Well, of course, by then their knees are closed. And that's what's really important, folks. Usually 2 years or 6 months, their knees are closed. And then start getting them in condition. Okay. Now, I used to punch cows on a 3-year-old mule all the time. Not a big deal. One of my favorite things is to tell you there's nothing like the butt of a cow to put a mind on a mule. Okay. And put them to work. So you condition them little by little. You don't run out and put 8-hour days on them. Okay. You put a couple hours on here in this day, and 2 hours the next day, and 2 hours the next day, and then pretty soon you're up to 5 and work up the condition. Now, my favorite temperature gauge on my mule is the bottom of the ears. Now, Dave, you haven't heard this one yet, but I'm gonna tell you all, when I know a mule is starting to overheat at the base of the ear, right where it comes in the skull, it starts getting wet. And when it starts getting wet, then that tells me that the mule is starting to overheat and I need to back off.
All right. Thank you very much, Concrete Warriors. Appreciate that. Sharon is watching. How do I train my mule to stand at mounting block?
That's time consuming, but you first want to be able to teach them to stand still with the marting, with the come along rope. And then you walk alongside of them. You go up and put a ladder next to them. And when they go to move, you bump them with the come along rope. Okay. Now, eventually, you'll use the come along rope along with a long quirk, and you will tap on their off side to get their body to move over close to where you're going to mount. Okay. But first, you start with using a short but workable step ladder. Okay. And you put the step ladder up next to them. When they get worried about step ladder, you bump them, and you put the step ladder up again. You bump them. Pretty soon they start understanding. Okay. Not that you're desensitizing them, but you are training them that when their feet move, no matter what comes at them, they are to stand still. So there's the basics for you. That's always want to start. Always want to start with come along rope and teaching two things: straightness and feet are quiet. Number one thing is feet are quiet. Number two, straightness as you're going.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Ivy is watching from New Sharon, 42 degrees, New Sharon, Maine. Marcia is watching from Virginia, as Marcia does. Getting in wood and hay, so I am whipped. Sorry I'm late. Happy Halloween. You got here, Marcia. And you know what they say, better late than never. I didn't know. I'm just being silly. John asked the question, do you keep shoes on the mule in the winter when they're living in the snow and mud?
I sometimes will change out shoes and put borium on the toes and on the heels. Now that's just a welded on stuff that you put on with flux and brass and put on the toes and the heels. That's one of the ways of doing it. I I most of all I trim them short. The shorter the hoof, the less opportunity that the mud and the snow is going to ball up inside the foot. Okay, so so doing them short is keeping them short is the best thing to do without shoes. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, I must say that if you are fixing a contracted heel, or if you're doing some type of work in that way to help a foot problem, then yeah, you want to keep a shoe on. But otherwise, no, pretty much unshod and short.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Karen says, good morning. When teaching a young mule to stand still with the come along rope, what time frames of standing still would you find acceptable in the training process?
Stages of 3, 6, 9, 12. So okay, I'm using my come along rope, and I he stands still nice and quiet, and I sit there and I'll probably count to 60, and then I'll move him off a step or two, and then I'll ask him to be quiet again, and then I'll probably count to 60, and then I'll move him off a step or two again, and I'll count to 60. Now I've done my 3. Now I'm done. Okay. Now, if at any one time the foot goes to move too much or the head moves too much, we start over again with our 3. But always accept the smallest try. If the mule stands still for even, especially if normally they're really busy, if they'll stand still for just a split second, a count of 5 even, okay, call it good, move it and do it again, okay. But don't try to get perfection right off the bat. Eventually you'll get to where you can do 12 standing in one spot and counting up, and they'll do just fine.
All right, Steve, I didn't tell you this earlier, but I'm kind of excited today. So my son he's 12 years old, and our family is not athletic, but he's in middle school now, and we really think that it's valuable for him to be involved in some sort of an extracurricular activity outside of school. Well, every semester they offer what's called a no-cut sport. And this semester, he signed up for cross country. So today is his very first cross country meet, and it's about 30 minutes away. And so I wanted to know if we could go ahead and speed through these last ones real quickly here,
Hurry.
so that I could get in the car and go see him run his very first meet. So
Yeah, let's go.
let's see. Blue Possum says, hey, Steve, I feed 50/50 alfalfa cubes and crimped oats. That's all I can get at my feed store other than sweet feed. Is that an adequate diet? I feed mixture of pasture hay also.
No, you don't need to be feeding oats, and alfalfa is really tough on their urinary tract. So I would definitely trade it out for a hay that won't be so high in carbohydrates on them.
Yeah, so Blue Possum, check out the Mules Can't Stand Prosperity article. I linked to that. Watch the Feed Talk video, and then get with your feed store and see what they can come up with that matches that. Elizabeth says, hello, I got in late today, watching from Georgia, wanted to ask for advice. My mule is improving with leading, but wants to walk at a slower pace a lot of the time. I recently ordered the come along hitch. What should I be doing to get them to lead, not at the slower pace?
Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the same thing when we're talking about basic equitation. All right. Sometimes you want to speed them up. Sometimes you want to slow them down. Most of that is done with your legs when you're in the saddle. But now, in the very beginning, we're going to say, okay, I got a post in my corral picked out. Okay. And I am going to walk directly to that post straight, and I'm going to walk at whatever pace the animal wants. And I'm going to do that 3 times. Go to the post, turn around, go back to the other post, turn around, go back to the post, and I'm done today at the pace the animal wants to go. Now, the next time I do it, okay, now I'm going to do 6. I'm going to do those 3 at his pace, and then I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit by bump, 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 rolling my hands and asking the animal to go faster. And they will do that simply because um, of the amount of pressure upon the come along rope. Now, this is to say this is that you want to make sure your ground communication work is done correctly first. They stand still and quiet, they stand straight, things like that.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. David Pengelly says the overheat lesson was great. I've never heard that before. Everyone should know this. Thank you. And we will make sure to get that message out there. Folks, thank you for hanging out with us today. It has been a pleasure. Remember, register for Steve's next online webinar clinic. It's Riding with Confidence and Certainty, Equitation for Mule and Donkey Riders. The link to register for this free event is in the comment section. You can go sign up. And as soon as we get the link for watching set up, we'll send you that so you have everything you need for November 13th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. I also wanted to remind you next week, it's an hour earlier for everybody outside of Arizona. We're going to be going live 2 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. Can't wait to see you there. Steve, anything else you want to say today?
No, we're off and running. Looking forward to pictures of your boy running.
I will
We'll see
bring
you
those
later.
next week. I'll make sure to get one with me and him, and I'll bring it next week. Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Bye.
Make sure that you pray for the country, vote for our leaders, and trust everything to the Creator because He is the one who's got it all rightly ordered. See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.